The stars were calm, shining like tiny silver fires across the endless black sea of space. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. But peace in the galaxy never lasted long. The Galactic Empire had decided to make its move, and this time, the target was Earth. In the heart of the galaxy, the Empire controlled hundreds of worlds. Their ships were massive, carrying weapons that could burn cities in seconds. Their soldiers were bred for war, trained from birth to crush resistance. To them, humanity was nothing, just another small species that had arrived late among the stars. A people that had no right to challenge the old powers. The Empire's broadcast spread across the void, reaching every colony, every station, every planet where humans lived. A tall alien general appeared on the screen, his golden armor shining, under the cold light. His eyes were cruel, his voice sharp like a blade. "Terrans," he said, his words echoing across space. "You are a young race, weak, reckless. You have expanded too far, too fast. The Galactic Empire does not tolerate chaos. You will submit or you will burn." On Earth and across its colonies, people stopped what they were doing. Farmers froze in the fields. Engineers paused in the shipyards. Children looked up at the sky, their hearts beating faster. Fear traveled through every corner of human space. But inside the Terran Fleet command hall, the reaction was different. The room was dark, filled with glowing screens and the low hum of computers. Maps of stars and fleets stretched across the walls. Generals stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the alien broadcast. They had seen the Empire's power before. They knew what those warships could do. At the center stood Admiral Reyes. His hair was silver now, his face lined with years of war. He had fought battles on Earth and beyond, battles where survival seemed impossible. He listened to the alien, General's threat carefully without flinching. And then he smiled. It was not the smile of arrogance. It was not the smile of madness. It was the grin of someone who had seen impossible odds before and had survived them. The officers around him noticed. Some felt uneasy. Others felt inspired. One young captain whispered, "Admiral, why are you smiling?" Reyes did not answer. His eyes remained locked on the screen, on the face of the alien who thought humans would surrender. He knew what. The Empire did not. Humanity had always been underestimated. On Earth they had fought wars against empires far larger than themselves. They had survived plagues, disasters, and endless struggles. To survive was in their blood. The broadcast ended, with the alien general raising his weapon and declaring, "You have one cycle to surrender. Refuse and your worlds will burn." Then the screen went black. Silence filled the command hall. For a long moment no one spoke. The weight of the Empire's threat hung heavy in the air. Finally, Admiral Reyes broke the silence. His voice was calm, steady, but filled with fire. "They believe we are weak. They believe we will kneel. They have made the same mistake others have made before. They forgot what it means to challenge humanity." Outside, the Terran Fleet rested in orbit above Earth. Hundreds of ships waited in the dark, their engines glowing faintly. Compared to the Empire's armada, they looked small, fragile. But inside those ships were men and women who had grown up hearing the stories of Earth's past struggles. They knew fear, but they also knew resilience. In the outer colonies, whispers began to spread. Farmers, miners, engineers, all shared the same story. "The Empire has threatened us, but our fleet will answer. Our leaders are not afraid." Back in the command hall, the officers prepared their reports. Strategies were drawn. Simulations were run. The odds looked terrible. Every calculation showed defeat. But when they glanced at Admiral Reyes, they saw something strange in his eyes, a light, a spark, as if he already knew something they did not. One officer finally dared to ask, "Admiral, do we have a plan?" Reyes looked at him, still wearing that quiet grin. "Yes, but it is not one the Empire will ever expect." Outside the windows, the stars burned silently. Somewhere beyond, The Empire's fleets were already on the move. The galaxy watched, waiting to see how long Earth would last against such power, but no one could see what Admiral Reyes saw. He knew the Empire had strength, but strength alone had never broken humanity. The grin on his face was not for himself. It was for the history of his people. The Empire thought they were bringing fear, but they had only awakened something else, something far more dangerous. The Empire's message echoed across every human colony, but instead of breaking their spirit, it lit something deep inside them. Fear was there, yes, but behind the fear was anger, and behind the anger was determination. On the colony world of New Horizon, a miner named Jonah wiped the dust from his face as he watched the broadcast on a cracked screen. His young daughter clutched his arm. "Papa, will they come here?" she whispered. Jonah did not answer at first. He looked at the stars above the mine shafts, then finally said, "Let them come. We built this world with our hands. We won't give it to anyone." On Earth, in the vast cities that touch the sky, engineers worked without pause. Factories roared day and night, creating weapons and ships as fast as human hands and machines could manage. Soldiers drilled in frozen tundras, deserts, and oceans, preparing for a war that seemed impossible to win. But humanity had always trained for the impossible. In space, the Terran Fleet moved quietly. Small ships darted from planet to planet, carrying coded messages and secret orders. The Empire's spies watched, but what they saw looked weak. Terran fleets were scattering, splitting apart. It seemed like panic. It seemed like humans had no plan. But that was exactly what Admiral Reyes wanted them to think. Inside the command hall, Reyes stood before a star map. Red dots marked the Empire's approaching fleets, stretching across systems like a storm front. Blue dots marked the Terran ships, scattered thin, too thin to survive a direct clash. To any outsider, it looked hopeless. One of the generals spoke. "Admiral, if we stand against them directly, we will lose everything. The numbers are too great." Reyes nodded slowly. "If we fight their war, yes. But we will not fight their war. We will fight ours." He tapped the map, and hidden paths appeared. Gravity wells, asteroid fields, nebula storms where scanners failed. Places no Empire commander would risk taking their giant ships. But to humans who had grown up on dangerous worlds, those places were home. Another officer frowned. "You want us to hide? To run?" Reyes' grin returned, sharp as a blade. "Not hide. Hunt." The room fell silent. Far away, in the icy colonies of Europa, pilots climbed into old fighters. Their ships were small, fragile compared to the Empire's cruisers, but each was loaded with weapons crafted for speed and precision. They did not look like soldiers of a grand army. They looked like wolves preparing for the hunt. On Mars, a group of scientists loaded strange devices onto a cargo ship, machines built in secret, powered by stolen fragments of alien tech. They whispered to one another, "The Empire has never seen this before. They will never expect it." Back on Earth, civilians gathered in the streets, listening to broadcasts from the fleet. No promises of easy victory were made. No lies were told. Only one truth: humanity would not bow. In a dimly lit room, Admiral Reyes finally spoke to his people through the comms. His voice was steady, filled with steel. "We have been underestimated. The Empire sees us as weak. They see us as fragile. But history tells another story. On Earth, we have fought wars against empires greater than this one. We have faced plagues that killed millions, disasters that broke nations. And yet, we stand. Always, we stand." Across colonies and stations, his words reached millions. Farmers, miners, soldiers, and children listened. They felt their fear turn into fire. Reyes continued, "The Empire has numbers. They have power, but they lack something far greater. They do not understand humanity. They do not understand what it means to fight for home, for family, for survival. That is our weapon. That is why we will endure." Cheers erupted across ships and colonies. The Terran fleet might have been small, but now it felt like something much larger. Still, the Empire's shadow grew closer with every hour. Their fleets were advancing, engines glowing, like suns. Time was running out. Inside the command hall, a young captain looked at Reyes and whispered, "Admiral, what if they crush us? What if there's no chance?" Reyes leaned closer, his eyes cold but alive with fire. "Then we make them bleed. We remind them that humanity never dies quietly. And in that reminder, we will find our chance." Outside, the scattered Terran ships changed formation, slipping into hidden paths and uncharted routes. To the Empire, it looked like panic. But to humanity, it was resolve, the beginning of a plan only they could understand. The galaxy thought humans were breaking, but in truth, they were sharpening their claws. The silence of space shattered when the Empire's war drums began. Their armada emerged from hyperspace like a storm of fire. Thousands of warships spread across the system, blotting out the stars. The sheer size of the fleet was enough to crush the spirit of most civilizations. Whole planets had fallen at the sight alone. In the Terran command hall, the screens glowed red as the Empire's ships filled every sensor. Officers murmured in disbelief. The enemy was too vast, too powerful. One whispered, "We are ants before giants." But Admiral Reyes stood unmoved. His eyes followed the storm like a hunter watching prey. "Signal the fleet," he said calmly. "It begins." The first clash came above the barren world of Karsus IV, a mining colony long abandoned. The Terran fleet had chosen the battleground, carefully. The planet's gravity field was unstable, its orbit wrapped in broken asteroids and ion storms. Dangerous for large ships, but perfect for wolves. The Empire entered with confidence. Their commanders laughed at the sight of the Terran ships. Small, scattered frigates and corvettes, glowing faintly in the darkness. "Pathetic," one alien captain sneered. "This will be over in minutes." And then the sky exploded. Terran ships darted forward like sparks from fire, weaving between asteroids with impossible speed. The Empire fired their massive cannons, beams of light tearing through the void, but they missed again and again. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like predators. A squadron of Terran fighters cut across the flank of a massive destroyer, releasing magnetic mines that clamped to its hull. A moment later, the destroyer erupted in fire, its giant frame collapsing under its own weight. The Empire's confidence cracked. They are too fast," one commander roared. "They are unorganized," another replied, trying to convince himself. But deep inside, doubt was spreading. In the middle of the chaos, Admiral Reyes's flagship, Resolute, held steady. Reyes watched the battle with sharp eyes. Every Terran maneuver looked reckless, desperate, but he knew it was controlled chaos. "Push them deeper," he ordered. The Terran ships pulled back, luring the Empire closer into the asteroid field. The enemy followed, thinking humans were retreating. But it was no retreat. It was a trap. Suddenly, the asteroid field came alive. Hidden turrets, disguised drones, and railgun platforms powered by stolen solar energy activated all at once. From every rock and shadow, fire rained upon the Empire's fleet. The void shook with explosions. Empire cruisers fell, their wreckage spinning into the darkness. Yet the battle was far from easy. For every alien ship destroyed, a Terran ship burned as well. The enemy's numbers were overwhelming. Humans fought with courage, but courage alone could not stop the tide. Inside the Resolute, alarms screamed as enemy fire struck its shields. Officers shouted reports of losses. Dozens of Terran ships were gone. Hundreds of lives lost in minutes. One young captain cried out, "Admiral, we cannot hold. We must retreat for real this time." Reyes did not flinch. His grin returned. "Not yet. Let them believe victory is theirs. Let them chase us." And so the Terran fleet broke formation. To the Empire, it looked like collapse. Human ships scattered in every direction, fleeing into the shadows of the asteroid field. The alien commanders cheered, their arrogance returning. "Cowards," the alien general laughed. "They run like frightened animals. End this now." The Empire surged forward, chasing the humans into the dark. But as they did, something strange appeared on their sensors. Unknown signals, hidden movements, whispers across the comms. The humans had not run. They had vanished, only to appear, again on unexpected sides. One alien captain shouted, "Where did they go?" Another screamed, "They're behind us." The stars lit up once more as the Terran Fleet struck from the shadows, tearing through supply ships and cutting off communications. The Empire's massive size, once a strength, became a weakness. Their ships were too slow, too rigid, too used to easy victories. And above it all, in the command hall of the Resolute, Reyes whispered to himself, "Now they bleed." The first clash had ended. The Empire had won nothing. Humanity had lost. Ships, yes, but they had gained something far greater, fear in the heart of their enemy. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire realized they were not fighting animals. They were fighting hunters. The Empire licked its wounds after the first clash. Their ships had been damaged, their pride even more. Yet still, their armada stretched across the stars, endless and overwhelming. To them, humanity was nothing more than an annoyance, a spark against a storm. They believed the next strike would end it all, but Admiral Reyes was already 3 steps ahead. In the command hall of the Resolute, the lights glowed dim as officers studied new star maps. Lines of code, intercepted transmissions, and hidden signals covered the screens. To an outsider, it looked like confusion. To Reyes, it was a weapon. "Admiral," one officer said nervously, "we cannot keep this up. Every time we clash, we lose more ships. Our numbers are falling." Reyes leaned over the console, his silver eyes sharp. Numbers don't win wars. Fear does. The Empire did not know, but humans were rewriting the battlefield itself. Their engineers had been hacking into abandoned satellites, reprogramming old navigation buoys, and scattering false signals across the system. Slowly, silently, they were painting a maze in the stars. The next battle began near the gas giant, Helion. The Empire arrived with 100 warships scanning for human fleets. They saw faint signals everywhere: distress beacons, emergency calls, fake heat signatures. To them, it looked like Terran ships were scattered in panic. "Divide and crush them," the alien general ordered. Their ships split apart, hunting shadows. That was the mistake. From the swirling clouds of Helion, Terran fighters appeared like phantoms. They struck fast, vanishing before the Empire could react. Then explosions tore through enemy ranks, not from human weapons, but from their own. The Empire's ships began colliding, firing at false targets, confused by hacked signals. One cruiser destroyed another, believing it to be a Terran decoy. Panic spread through their comms. "What is happening?" an alien commander screamed. "They've infected our systems," another shouted. Reyes's grin widened. They are blind, and when giants go blind, they fall. But it wasn't only machines the humans had turned into weapons. They had also turned themselves. On a small, unmarked freighter, a team of Terran Marines drifted silently toward an Empire battleship. Their ship was disguised as wreckage, floating cold and dead. The aliens ignored it, too focused on chasing the phantom signals. At the last second, the freighter came alive. Its engines roared, and its hull cracked open, revealing boarding pods. The Marines launched like bullets, slamming into the battleship's hull. Inside, chaos erupted. Terran soldiers poured through the corridors using gravity charges and plasma blades. They fought not to conquer, but to cripple. Engines were sabotaged, reactors overloaded, and control rooms torn apart. Before the Empire realized, one of their strongest ships was gutted from the inside. Back on the Resolute, Reyes received the report. "The battleship is disabled, Admiral. Our team is returning." Reyes simply nodded. His grin never faded. By now, the Empire's commanders were furious. They had the numbers, they had the power, and yet every time they pushed forward, humanity found a way to twist the fight. The alien general slammed his clawed hand on the table. "They do not fight with honor. They scurry, they cheat, they hide." His second-in-command replied bitterly, "Perhaps that is why they win." The Empire doubled their forces, preparing for one final overwhelming strike. But the seeds of doubt had already been planted. Their fleet was bleeding strength, not from human weapons, but from human cunning. In The Terran command hall, Reyes stood before his officers. His voice was low, calm, almost cold. "They think us cowards," he said. "They call us dishonorable. But this is not about honor, this is about survival. And survival has always been humanity's greatest trick." The officers looked at him, their fear melting into fire. For the first time, they understood. This war would not be won with strength. It would be won with wit, patience, and the willingness to do what others would not. Outside, the stars burned with silent fury. The Empire gathered for their final assault. But Reyes was waiting, his grin sharper than ever. The galaxy thought humanity was cornered. They did not realize humans had led them into the corner. The final storm was coming. The Galactic Empire had gathered its might. Thousands of warships burned across the void, their engines like suns, their cannons glowing with destructive light. This was no longer a campaign. It was an extermination. The order was clear: erase humanity from the stars. From their massive flagship, the alien general sneered. Terrans played their little games. They tricked, they cheated, they ran. But now, it ends. Nothing survives the Empire's will. Across human space, people waited. On colonies, on Earth, on stations hidden among asteroids, they all watched the sky. Some prayed, some wept, some simply clenched their fists, refusing to bow even as doom approached. Inside the Terran Fleet command hall, silence ruled. The officers studied the enemy's approach, their faces pale. The numbers were impossible. No trap, no trick could stop so many. But Admiral Reyes stood tall, his silver hair glowing in the dim light, his grin still carved into his face. "They think we are cornered," he said quietly. "They believe this is the end. But they do not understand. Humanity's story never ends quietly." He raised his hand, and the map of the system appeared. At its center burned a massive star, Helion's twin, a blazing sun surrounded by unstable plasma storms. For centuries, no fleet dared come close, but Reyes had been preparing for this moment. "Bring them closer," he ordered. The Terran fleet scattered, darting toward the sun. The Empire, drunk with arrogance, followed. To them, it was desperation. To humans, it was destiny. As the Empire's armada pushed deeper, strange anomalies flickered around them. Magnetic storms, radiation waves, gravity shifts, all triggered by hidden Terran devices planted weeks earlier. The battlefield itself began to twist. Then the final move began. From the heart of the sun's orbit, massive constructs emerged: solar lances, rail platforms, and mirror arrays powered directly by the star. They had been built in secret, hidden in the storms, invisible to scanners. Now they awakened. The void blazed with light as the sun's energy was bent and focused into weapons. Beams of pure solar fire ripped across the battlefield, tearing through the Empire's warships. Cruisers melted, battleships cracked. Entire formations collapsed in seconds. The alien general roared in rage. "Impossible! No one can control a star." But humanity had. Terran ships weaved through the chaos, striking at crippled targets, boarding survivors, and cutting supply lines. Every move was savage, precise, unstoppable. For every human ship that fell, 3 Empire ships burned. Inside the Resolute, alarms screamed. Shields were failing, hulls breaking. Reyes stood calmly in the center, his grin never fading. "Admiral," a captain shouted, "we are losing ships. Too fast. We can't survive this much longer." Reyes' eyes burned with fire. Survival was never the plan. Victory is. He ordered the final strike. The mirror arrays shifted, channeling one last burst of the sun's fury. The star itself screamed as light bent into a spear of destruction. It tore through the Empire's flagship, cutting it in half, its fragments falling into the star's gravity well. The alien general's last words were lost in static. The invincible fleet of the Empire was shattered. Silence followed. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, human and alien alike. Flames burned, bodies drifted, stars flickered. But amid the silence, One truth stood clear. Humanity had survived. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. The Terrans had stood against the Empire. They had grinned at death itself, and death had blinked first. On alien worlds, leaders gathered in fear. If humans can bring down an empire, one whispered, what else are they capable of? On Earth, people cheered through tears. They had lost much, but they had not bowed. And in their victory, they had earned something no weapon could destroy: respect and fear. Admiral Reyes stood at the shattered window of the Resolute. The stars burned beyond, the wreckage of the Empire drifting like ash. His face was lined with exhaustion, his body heavy with loss. But the grin was still there, because humanity had done the impossible, and now every corner of the galaxy would remember. Not the threat, not the fear, not even the victory. They would remember the grin. The grin that shook the galaxy,